live. Welcome to the good, the bored, and the ugly. Anyway, we haven't officially started the episode yet, guys. I'll give you a countdown here in a minute.
Save project. What is it? 111.
111. Time or lack thereof.
Cry fest. Andy.
Yep, Andy and Joe crying on Trent's shoulders. All right.
So far, I've done two homework assignments for Phil Eklund, though. That's cool.
I thought you were going to say something that actually mattered, Andy. 2 homework assignments for Phil Eklund?
Yeah.
You gotta be kidding me.
No. He needed
What do
help
you mean?
reviewing the cards.
The guy gives you homework?
Yeah. He asked me to look at all the cards and double check their iconography to make sure they all matched.
That is busy work.
Yep, he's farming out work that he should pay someone for. This is what you hire editors for.
Well, it is Sierra Madre.
I feel like Andy.
I don't care.
Andy has officially become a game company's bitch.
Yeah, you already kind of were with Splotter with the whole. What do you expect? It's a Splotter game. You're not going to get nice pieces. Or what do you expect? It's 18xx. You don't expect artwork. It's like, no. Now Andy has literally gotten to the point of doing secretarial tasks for a game company.
It took me all of half an hour while listening to music, so it actually wasn't bad because at the time I needed some pointless busy work. So,
well, Andy, I have a few things. If you don't mind, here in this upcoming week, I'm gonna need to put in some grades, and
yeah. Oh no. See, I was using this pointless busy work to avoid my school pointless busy work.
Okay, yeah. Andy, you should go on tour with that.
No, because literally every time I have to do curriculum work now, I pull up the template and I just get pissed off looking at it.
I would say it's a pretty common reaction for people where it just feels like you're being forced to jump through hoops and nobody's actually going to read it.
Yeah, I'm half tempted to just write "this is fucking stupid" down on every line to see if anyone sees it as anything, but...
Well, all right. Let's go ahead and press record.
Okay.
Here in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm your host, Joe Sallin, and I'm joined tonight by...
Andrew Dennison.
Trent Ham.
We're going to be chatting to you guys about how difficult it is to find time for the thing that we love, which is board games. Anyway, we're going to tell you about how we try to make our very tight schedules fit, especially with this time of the year. First, I'd like to start off with a congratulations to the Boone High School tennis team for their win last night over their first opponent of the year, Norwalk, and which is excellent. I'm the assistant coach, and that's one of the reasons this topic is coming out, because I absolutely love what I do, but what do I do to try to fill that need, that hole in my life for board games when I am so busy that I can't find the time? And these guys will have some of their own stories to share, as well as we're going to hype games before we do that. We're then going to review games we're going to hype games after that. We're going to review games before we start anything else. So without further ado, because we all know how crunched we are for time, we're going to go ahead and kick off our review with a Albin Viard fairly simple game, I believe. Does that sound accurate, Trent? It's Albin Viard, correct? It's Albin Viard?
Yes, it's an Albin Viard game.
Compared to his other games, this is much simpler.
Yes, I would agree with that. I'm going to talk about Town Center by Albin Viard. This is a game in which you are simulating the growth of a city center, like I guess you would describe as like a tightly interwound core of a large city that would be like a bunch of industrial and residential and commercial areas, all in the center of a city. And you're simulating this with cubes. I would say if you're familiar with the concept of an arcology, that's almost what you're building here. And that it's almost like a very highly compressed mixture of all of these things on multiple levels. Because what this honestly is is it's kind of a 3D abstract game, except that you kind of control your own 3D abstract puzzle that you're trying to solve. And the only real player interaction is through this interesting cube draft, is the way I would describe it. So the way each round goes, and there's 10 rounds in the game, is that one of the players starts off the draft by picking a number of cubes out of the bag that's twice the number of players, and then making a certain number of stacks out of them depending on the number of players. So you up to 4 players, you make a number of stacks equal to the players, and then above that count, you continue to make only 4 stacks, but the stacks are taller. So you're making these little stacks of cubes, and like they're different colored cubes. One represents industrial, one represents commercial, one represents residential, one represents power, and one represents elevation. So like, so imagine it's in a college and you need elevators to get to the higher levels of the building that you're trying to build. So you're putting these cubes out in stacks, and then you're taking turns drafting them. So you make these 4 stacks of cubes, let's say, and then you choose one of the cubes off of one of the stacks. So you have 4 cubes that are on top of the stacks available to you, and then you choose one, and then the next player has 4 cubes on top of stacks available to them, and they choose one. Now, if you both choose them from the same stack, that means now there's only 3 stacks available, so the next person only gets 3 choices. And you go around and you snake like this, and you come back to the first player, and then everybody adds cubes to their little 3D structure that they're building. You start off with one special sort of super... you have a starter cube, let's put it that way. And then around this, you're adding cubes on a little grid in front of you. It's a 3x4 grid, but there are expansion spaces, so you can go beyond this. And those expansion spaces cost you victory points at the end of the game. Now, the key mechanism of this game is that you're effectively trying to make groups of the same color, because that's how you can really combo up points, but by having a large group of the same color. But you generally can't put a fresh cube of the same color next to one of the previous. So let's say you already have a green cube on the board. You can't just simply draft a green cube and plop it down next to that cube. You're not allowed to do that. You have to go start a new group with a new cube that you draft. So you have to put it somewhere else on your arrangement that's not adjacent to that green cube. And once you've done that, there's a growth mechanism based on a cube adjacency that will allow you to grow together some of these groups that you put on the board. So let's say you have 2 green cubes that are diagonal to each other, and then you have the conditions are right for both one of them to grow, which I don't remember exactly what the recipe is, but it's a recipe based on other cubes being adjacent to it. And then if it is able to grow, then you can put a cube in place to link those 2 units. So now it's 3 big. And then that will enable you to get a lot more points a lot more rapidly. The elevator ones turn this from a 2D game into a 3D game. You essentially draft black cubes to make an elevator. And these elevators enable you to basically start stacking cubes on top of cubes. So this entire thing of building separate groups and then merging them goes quickly into 3 dimensions. And that's when you start getting really spatial. It gets very spatial, and it feels very abstract, I would say. It's not a real thematic game. But there's a lot to think about. It's like solving an abstract puzzle, or like a Rubik's Cube almost type of puzzle. Except you're kind of building it yourself, and you're trying to figure out how on earth this is even going to work and earn you any points. Like I said, it's very multiplayer solitaire. The player interaction does come in through the draft, but most of your thinking that you're going to be doing is in terms of like, okay, these cubes are available to me. How can I place them in here to generate any sort of points and growth? Really what you want is growth, because growth will eventually lead to points. So you're looking at what's available to you is like, how can I possibly put this in here to build any growth? So when someone's setting up the cubes for the initial draft, they're often sitting around looking a lot at the other players' boards thinking, that person really needs a green cube. I want to do everything I can to make sure that they're not going to get a green cube. And so you're making your little stacks for drafting accordingly. I found it to be a game with a lot of interesting decisions, but you got to realize right off the bat that it's essentially, it doesn't have a whole lot of player interaction, and it's almost an abstract. It feels very much like a puzzle that you're solving on your own, is the kind of the feel you get of this game. But it's a competitive puzzle because you're trying to, score points and at the end have more points than all the other players. I found it really interesting. I wanted to play it again, but I'm attracted to these types of games. I like abstracts. It's not heavy on the player interaction. I probably would like games with a little more player interaction, but I don't know how you do this game with more player interaction.
I mean, you're kind of drafting the cubes, right? So
yeah, the drafting is player interaction, but the actual problem, no one else can mess with your city. Once you've got the cubes that you've drafted, you're adding them to your own city, and it's on its own isolated bubble. You're not really impacted by other players. The only way you're impacted is within that draft. Like I said, I really liked it. It doesn't have like intense player interaction. You can't really completely hose other players at all. You can't do too much to really affect their city. Mostly what you're going to be doing is looking at your 3D structure, doing a lot of spatial rotation in your head, and figuring out how on earth you're going to get your little groups to grow and merge together so you can combo for lots of points. If that sounds appealing, you're going to love this game. If that sounds horrible, you're not. I mean, that's really all I can say about it. It's one of those things that's either for you or it's not for you, and I don't know. I mean, there's really not else to say than that. For me, it's a for me, and I went and have already started bargain hunting for this game because I want to own a copy. I think it's something that would also appeal to my wife. That is Town Center by Alban Viard. It plays probably in about 15 minutes per player, maybe 20 minutes, depending on how bad your AP gets with your spatial reasoning. I guess if someone is really bad at that, it could definitely go longer.
Yeah. I've played this one, and I actually, I don't know if I ever got a chance to review it. I don't think that I did. So I'm glad that you brought it up because I see a similarity here between, first of all, Town Center is maybe the most similar in structure to Blueprints, which is a game that I've listed on my top games of all time, Geek List, which I'm in the process of updating for this new year. But anyway, I really like Blueprints a lot because it has exactly what you're talking about. Town Center is missing there, Trent. It has everything that you get in that game is an award, and you're competing with other players to try to get the most points in these different rounds. But you kind of have this where one round doesn't affect the next round. You kind of start from scratch every single round, which I prefer the way that Town Center carries over. Like it's a cohesive experience. It's not just like 3 rounds of totally disconnected competitions where all you're doing is tallying points totals between those 3 rounds. Anyway, the other game that really compares to Town Center, I would say, is Small City, which is also by Alban Viard, and that's because he took this element of the sort of the way that the different cubes that you place impact other cubes around it. He took it, made it 2-dimensional, and essentially made it have a very heavy economic side to it, a very fierce economic side with lots of teeth. And that's, I say, where Small City pretty much sits. So I think if you thought that it was, I hope, Trent, maybe that gives you an idea. I'm sure you've played Blueprints or seen Blueprints before. Have you ever heard of that?
I have seen Blueprints. I have not played it. I very much want to play Small City because, like I said, I've liked all of the Alban Viard games I have played thus far.
So. Yeah, I absolutely think that both of those games would be for you. I think that you would quite like Blueprints too. Blueprints adds dice drafting to it. But it definitely has that interaction that's missing from Town Center. It's just you're only ever going to be placing I want to say 6 dice at once. So I mean it's definitely a lot smaller of a game because it's divided into 3 very small rounds that make up about 10 minutes maybe each. But Town Center is still a really to me, it was a very cool and interesting game. It added that 3rd dimension from what I'd already played before in Small City because I kind of played them in opposite order. And I did quite enjoy Town Center. I thought that it was fun. It was very abstract, like you mentioned, which I'm sure isn't a knock for you, Trent. But for me, it was just a little bit more abstract. I wanted a little bit more, too. Where you were wanting more interaction, I just wanted more, other stuff to consider to maybe make, some unique cubes, quote unquote. I don't know how exactly it would work, but maybe just some other elements that would make the game just a tad more appealing to me. Maybe something I could sink my teeth into a little bit more. And that's kind of how I feel about Town Center. I like it, and I just like you really wanted a little bit more out of it. Andy, you like Alban Viard games because you like Tramways. I don't think you would like this one, honestly. I can say that pretty confidently. I don't think there's anything here for you.
Yeah.
It's like a Euro game. It's very Euro.
Yeah. Well, and from what I've been told, it sounds similar. The only comment I really had on it, because other than The spatial thing, which I think Edward on Heavy Cardboard said this is the only game his wife has ever walked out on. Like she just couldn't take it.
It's not even that bad. You could play this with your kids, I think, Trent. It's not.
No, I think my 11-year-old could handle it if we were really. I think the first game would be kind of a mess, but I think after that, I think it would click.
Yeah, I think she said she's just not good at spatial. But
I'm not good at spatial either, but I was fine here.
But anyway, based on the description, I don't think this one's probably up my alley. The only other comment I had is, Trent, you mentioned it being like Arcology, and that's actually going to be his next game.
Well, I meant like in general the concept of an arcology, not that. Yeah, but I mean that's interesting that that's literally the theme he's using. It's not surprising given like the theme of Small City and also the theme of this that he would make a game literally about arcologies.
Yeah, from what I've heard, the next one is supposed to kind of take its cues a little more from Town Center, maybe. So that might be something for you to check out.
It might be exactly what you were asking for, Trent, or maybe it's what I was asking for.
I really like this game. I think I think my taste for player interaction is a little harsher than my wife's. I think I like more than she does. My suspicion is, although I haven't played it with her, that she'll actually really like this game.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Well, that's Town Center. And now, Sir Andy, would you tell us about an 18xx game for all of our wonderful 18xx fans out there?
So I've had now a chance to play. We're most of the way through, I think, our second game of 18 Mexico. So 18 Mexico, once again in the 18xx line, shares, stock, track, all that good stuff. The thing that makes 18 Mexico really kind of interesting, more so than I thought, is that, or the weird things about it is you get like a mail contract, so you get a little bit of money in your treasury based on your starting city every round, which you're going to need because there is like terrain all over the place you have to pay money for. So that can really strip and nail your companies a bit. There's also within the private companies your typical, special tile here, get a share there. But there's also kind of your minor companies that can lay some track, and then eventually those are going to close. And their money is going to fold into one of the major companies, and then a national company is going to eventually spring into being as well, and some of these minor companies can give shares of that. The thing that I think is probably most unique about this game, though, is the train rush is just brutal. It's crazy. The way the train rush works in 18 Mexico is that in most 18xx games, you can buy however many trains you want in any operation round up to your limit. Well, in 18 Mexico, the way it works is your Type 2 and Type 3 trains, as long as those are on the board, each company can only buy one train per operating round. So it's this really kind of slow train buildup. And then once the first 4 train is bought, that's like you pop the cork or something. Because now you can buy as many dang trains as you want. And the way the games have kind of worked out that I've played of this so far is that, it's slow, then like all the 4s, all the 5s, and all the 6s are sold out within like 3 operating rounds. The first game I played of this, the 4 trains literally never ran their main run. That we were basically rusting these trains out before they even had a chance to do much. The only thing that's weird is in most 18xx games, once they rust, like they're gone. Now in 1846, you get one more run of any obsolete trains. Well, they kind of do that in 18 Mexico. You get one more run, but only of a 4 train. That's the only one that does that. And then after that, they go away, and then you have to get on the permanent trains. So the game just does this crazy acceleration where it's just kind of like slow, meander, and oh my God, you just fell off a waterfall. And that's kind of what it feels like to me when I play it. It's kind of crazy. And if you're caught flat-footed by that train rush, like you can just be wrecked. Like you can end up buying a lot of trains out of pocket, selling shares, and pretty nastiness. The one mechanic I haven't had any experience yet with is there's the potential to merge one of your companies into the National Railway, but you have to float the National Railway before like the first 6 train is bought. And that's really hard to do because like we didn't, when the first 4 train was bought, I don't even know if we had a stock round before the next 6 train was bought. Like it was just that many trains bought that quickly.
I was saying that in the game that I am playing with you right now, the 4 trains, I think one 4 train got to operate once, and all the other ones were like bought, and then they next round they were obsolete before they got to be used. I think there was one non-obsoleted run of a 4 train in this entire game.
Yep, and that's pretty much how my first game of it was too. It was insane because it lulls you into this sense of security. It's like slow train, all good, nice, easy going, and like all of a sudden, what it feels like to me is like you're on a roller coaster, and that slow, clank, clank, clank up the hill. You're like, okay, I can do this, no problem, and oh my God, as you go over the other side. And that's very much what 18 Mexico feels.
It feels to me like there aren't enough 4 and 5 trains in it, is what it feels like to me. Because what happens is the first 4 train bought and all the 2s die. And then like all those companies are now needing to buy 4s and 5 trains because they don't have a train or whatever. And then as soon as you blow through those, someone is immediately going to buy a 6 because they can now. And then all the 3s die.
Yeah, and then everyone has to buy the 6s or the diesels, and
then the 4s die, and then like it's just it's fast.
Yeah, and
it honestly feels to me like there aren't quite enough 4s and 5s in it. That's kind of the feeling I've got.
Except I would agree with you there, but I mean, usually these are play tested well enough. Like I have to think this is an intentional design.
I think it's intentional. It's interesting. It just that's the feeling you get is like, where are all the 4s and 5s? They're just gone. They go,
yep,
and they're gone.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. But so far, it's definitely been one of my more favorite 18xx's I've played. It's got some interesting things going on. The minors and privates that you get are really nice. The map is pretty nasty. You can really get involved in some nasty token wars. And even though we're playing this one online, I get the feeling that it wouldn't take too long to play it across the board. This feels like maybe a 4 to 6 hour top one for me.
I think it's shorter than 4 even. I don't think it's a particularly long one.
Yeah, really you might be right there too. Anyway, so 18 Mexico. If you have not tried it and you're a fan of 18xx and have a little bit of experience under your belt, this one I think is a good choice.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me like it's got its own thing, really distinguishing quality. Is there any other game you think has a train rush quite like this one?
The only other one that I've only heard by reputation is either 57 or 58. It was some winsome one that came out a year or 2 ago that I've heard in the community that the train rush in that game is the most unbelievable, brutal train rush in any XX game. And this is coming from really experienced 18xx players. I have not played one other than this game that is that nasty. I mean, you have a player or two of 1889, Joe, and we commented on how nasty that train rush is. That's nothing compared to this.
Well, 1889 is just kind of the same sort of train rush you'd expect from 1830, I think. Yeah, it's an element of the game. It's not everything. It's just one part.
Yeah, but I mean, you can buy a 4 train and reasonably expect to use it a few times. And like in 18 Mexico, it's like I have to buy a 4 train to survive, even though I know I'm probably going to use it once before it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. It's just this crazed acceleration on trains. But it is neat, and I think there's enough uniqueness there that it's definitely worth a play, if not a pickup. Mm-hmm. So
I would say for myself personally, I understand what the whole train rush is trying to like represent in terms of rusting, becoming obsolete. I just think it's kind of ridiculous, though, that you're going to buy a train, and then there are sometimes when you buy a train in these very, intense rushes, and you buy a train and it never runs, or it runs once, like you said. And that to me just seems kind of silly. Like, it's not like that would actually happen where you're like, oh, okay, well, now that we've come out with this new version, time is fast forwarded. And I understand that this is an abstraction, but to me, it's another thing that just raises my bar of entry for 18xx games, much like the track. I think somebody said that the fact that track is limited and specific to each game is kind of supposed to abstract the difficulties that were encountered in building track, which I thought was kind of already a part of the game because you have extra costs to go through certain areas. But I suppose that it's trying to get more other things. But I don't know. I think that if that's what its goal is to do, is to simulate like difficulties of building track at this time, I think it's a little bit weird that, like, I don't know, why don't you just have people roll dice to try to build things?
Yeah.
Because it seems like that's more what history was like, is like, oh, we're going to try to build over this pass. Oh, huge blizzard. Your track is ruined.
Yeah. Phil Eklund makes an 18xx game.
Yeah. So that element, the fact that this has such a rough train rush, still sounds like it's probably one that I need to have a better experience, a good experience with the 18xx system, with one that one that at least lets me get my sturdy wings and sturdy legs and sea legs, whatever it is, that before I ever do try ones that have that sort of take an element that I feel pretty lukewarm about, like the train rush and the track, and then see that part of the game, coming up to be really huge.
Yeah, I would not recommend this to like beginners or anything like that either. Yeah, this is definitely like, it's not a like heinously complex one, but it's definitely sort of a next step one.
Sure. Well, cool. So that's 18 Mexico. And now it's time for my review. And guys, I'm sorry to say this, but I really don't have much one. It's part of the reason we're doing our topic that we are. What do you do when you're running out of time? And for me, what I will do, and what I can at least give an honest review about, is online board gaming. And I would first say that my main experiences on online board gaming is playing on the website Yucata, which is yucata.de, yucata.de. It's a German website. And the games they have available there's a ton of different games, and it tends to be an incredibly stable system. That's what I really like about it, as opposed to the other offerings out there, especially Board Game Arena, because it has like the sort of there's no synchronous play on Yucata. It's all asynchronous, but you're getting emails immediately, so you can basically play synchronously. And I've done that quite a bit, but it's just that you're never being held to that synchronous play like you are in, say, Board Game Arena, where they have like timers and stuff. But I swear, so many times in Board Game Arena, I've had games dropped, and I've never had that happen. I've played more games now with Yucata than I have with Board Game Arena, and I've never had games dropped. So Yucata also has a really cool system where you're rewarded for trying new different types of games, which I really like. You level up and you have a different title, and everybody's title is visible to all other players, as well as all of your stats organized in what I thought was a more collected, cohesive way on Yucata than it was on any other website. I'm going to tell you guys about my experiences playing games that I've played before first. I really love playing games like The Voyages of Marco Polo, Castles of Burgundy, games that have not that much player interaction. I love playing them at pretty much every player count, and I really like playing those ones at the higher player counts because what they do is they make a game that would take too long for it to still be really fun and worth it to bust out on a game night, and they can really allow you to play that over, at your leisure, especially if a game is set up so that the turns you're able to do are pretty meaningful, and you're able to make quite a few decisions and still be able to see where you're at when you approach the game, on a later turn, so you still be able to see your strategy, still remember the game. It's something I really, really like. So big ones there that I enjoy quite a bit. I also really like playing 2-player games that have interaction in them, like say A Few Acres of Snow, because in a 2-player game, interaction is absolutely permissible because everything that you do to hurt your opponent helps you. So I really like playing those ones too. I try to stay away though from the 3-4-player games because once you're in a team of like 4 random people and you're the victim of one random person's attack, like of 4 guys you don't know, you just like, I don't know, to me it's just like, I don't know these people. The politics at the table are not even an element of the game. So I think that type of gameplay can really suffer. Even though I do really like dudes on a map game, I wouldn't plan to play them online. So the other things that I'd like to say is just a couple of reviews of games that I'd never played before. Finca and Hacienda. Hacienda is a game by Wolfgang Kramer, and I think Finca has a designer that I don't remember very well, but anyway, if you want to, you can go look it up. Anyway, both of them have kind of Spanish themes, Spanish-speaking Hispanic themes. In Hacienda, you are a farmer in Argentina, and it is a very abstract game, which kind of feels a little bit like Ticket to Ride. There's like 2 different piles of cards that you're drafting from. The whole point is that you're trying to sort of link together your spaces on the board and have the right animals in the right spots and get money to then make points, which generally involves you growing your farm, your haciendas, even more. Hacienda is like kind of a plantation essentially, where anyway, here's my problem with the game. I read the rules, I felt like I understood the game, and then I started playing. That game took like 3 weeks to finally get done. And since I'd never played the game in person, it took me about 2 to 3 days of playing the game for a lot of the rules, specifically on scoring, to just start sort of falling from my mind. And I don't want to, every time I go play a game, like go take another turn in an online game, have to go consult the rules on what the whole point of everything is. So I personally had a very rough experience with both of these games because I wasn't like, I was solid on the rules when I started. I had a plan when I started. It was like 2 weeks later, I barely even remembered the game. And so I would say, make sure you're solid on the rules before you just jump into something new. Even if you've read the rules once and have a feel for it, you have to have played the game, I think, several times. Feel like you know how to run the game on your own if you were to set it up with a bunch of new players and not have necessarily learning game experience. You don't want that to be your first online play of the game. So I can't really review necessarily Hacienda because I forgot it halfway through and it was miserable, so I hated it. Finca was pretty much the same thing. It's a much simpler game, but it was still that same general idea. I know it's a much simpler game, and I wasn't entirely blown away by this. You have this rondel where everybody's pieces are at, and you're trying to move. Like the amount of dudes that are on the space that you're currently on dictate how many movement points you get. So if there are 3 meeples on your space, no matter whose they belong to, you get to move 3, exactly 3. You don't get to choose how far you move. You move exactly 3. And then wherever you land, the meeples that are on that spot that you land on is how many of that specific resource, which is depending on every spot. Every spot's a different resource. I think there's 2 of everything in the game. Anyway, all you're doing in this game is getting fruit, which all of the fruit is basically interchangeable. It's just that it's on randomly determined recipe tiles that are in these different territories. And I've just really cooled a lot on recipe filling games. They're just not that interesting to me. I did not really like Finca's gameplay, even though I pretty much understood what was going on. By the end of it, there was a few rules I'd forgotten that made it so that my score was pathetic, which I don't care how bad I lose. It was just, once again, that sort of experience. So I'm really struggling with that right now with playing these games, trying to continue to play new games that I don't know, even though I don't have time to show up at game nights and stuff. And I'm kind of feeling a little bit of I guess I bit off more than I could chew there, thinking that was going to be my case. But I hope that you guys are able to, maybe have more patience and just maybe have a better memory than I do. But that was my personal experience. Have you guys ever played any of these games or have any comments about the online systems I've mentioned?
I think I played Pax Porfiriana on Yucata once, and it was a pretty solid.
They just recently added that too. That's a pretty new one. I think it was in beta when I checked it not too long ago.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out fine when I played it that way.
A lot of the online gaming platforms out there, like Board Game Arena and Yucata and Play Dominion and Play Diplomacy and all those other ones, they're all great. But the problem is, and this is something I'm kind of transitioning to our main topic, is that they don't function if the other players don't have the same level of buy-in as you do. If they're way more enthusiastic than you, then it's miserable. If they're way less enthusiastic than you, then it's miserable.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of online gaming. I find that that's almost always a problem I have with it, and usually I eventually end up getting burnt out for that reason.
I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, our attempts to get games going, the social aspect that makes every game, even if it's a miserable gaming experience, it can still be an incredibly fun and rewarding social experience. That is gone from online games. And so you end up with, do I like the game? Do I still like the game? Am I still having fun? And if it's two-player, you can go ahead and quit the game. Usually they have like a little button you can press to resign. But if it's a multiplayer game, you're going to get those updates, and it's never going to go away. So anyway, I agree there that, Trent, that the social aspect of it is, I don't know, it removes a lot of what can be rewarding, but you all have to buy in. You all have to be like a part of the game. And I think that's why almost every online system that's worth its, anything that's been around or has a large following all has some sort of a ladder board, some sort of a thing to make it so that even if a player doesn't buy in, the player that does buy in gets, rewarded for their skill at the game, I suppose. And that seems to be like a big thing. Like for me, I really appreciate what Yucata does, because I don't care about my leaderboards in the different individual games. I mean, occasionally I might catch that I'm this level, but that's usually because I'm prohibited from going into games, either because I have a too low of a level, which is most of the time the case, or maybe I have too high of a level, which is usually somebody wants to play a game with all newbies. And if I've played a game a few times, I'll have an ELO or whatever that's out of that. But the thing I like about Yucata is that it really just kind of pushes you to try learning and playing new games. But man, you need to just play games and learn them well, or just try to find somebody who will play it with you like synchronously, which is very, very easy to do on Yucata, because it usually notifies you when you have any open table if you have the window open. But yeah, it's something that you can definitely do to give yourself something that'll at least whet your appetite a little bit when you have no time to game, which is our topic. And Trent, as Trent mentioned, we've kind of segued already into it. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys, I think, Trent, since you've had something to say about this in the past, what do you specifically think? You seem like you've got it a pretty solid place, a pretty consistent space, where your game time isn't necessarily always fluctuating, if I'm evaluating your situation correctly. I don't know. Why don't we let you speak?
My wife and I have an arrangement that a certain amount of time we each get each week, and it's pretty well blocked off and considered very important to both of us, is for activities we want to do on our own. That is it. I have Sunday evenings to go, or Sunday late afternoons and evenings to go play games. And I have Tuesday evenings to go play games with a particular close friend of mine. Just mostly, that Tuesday night group is often more for specific social purposes as much as gaming. And those are my free evenings to do stuff, period. My wife has Wednesday evening to go do her singing. She's in a singing group. And then she has an activity that she shares with our oldest son and our other kids to a certain extent, Taekwondo, and she does that twice a week, but I'm okay with that more because it's also involving the kids. And those are things that are walled off. Those are important activities to both of us. And the other one respects that and tries really hard to keep that walled off and sacrosanct for the other partner. That's the only way I had like gaming time. If it wasn't for that, like everything else in my week is like blocked off. Yeah. Those are windows that we respect and keep very, very separate and important, and we both work for that. I work to keep her things important in my own, and she works to keep mine important in her own. And without that arrangement and agreement, I wouldn't have much time at all for gaming.
Yeah, I can definitely see how kids just fill up everything in your schedule. That's what I'm getting. I mean, I'm not a father. Maybe someday. but it just they kind of fill up all that space, and so it has to be a mutual agreement. And I mean, I'm in no position, where I have to currently worry about that, but I'm sure that's somewhere down the line, hopefully for me. But yeah, like for me, it fluctuates so much. It's like I'm constantly making some sort of an adjustment. Like I've got my entire school year. I love my job, but I am definitely looking forward to the summer where where I can really make a lot more decisions as to where I am, with more of my time. And I'm sure that most of our listeners out there that have jobs are all going to, like agree that, you've got a schedule you have to stick to. So I'm always like, I don't know, I'm always stuck with basically being, like my job is what generally comes before gaming first. And then also when I pick up tennis season, oh, I love it. It's such a great experience. It's nice to be outside when it's getting nice out. Finally, we start, it starts cold. Right now we're still kind of in the cold here in central Iowa. We're in like the 40s and 50s. And especially if it's a little bit like, if it's windy at all, you need, cover on somehow, but it's nice to be outside. The thing is, it makes my weeks go from where I'm working, a 40 to 50 hour week to a 55 to 70 hour weeks, depending. I mean, when you take all travel time and everything into consideration for when we have to travel and stuff. So yeah, I just basically can't game. And I think that my little brother has a similar situation where his schedule during tax season as an accountant is just swallowed up. So anyway, that's me and mine. What about you, Andy?
I think for me, it's like the biggest thing that's kind of an impact on my time is, I'm a teacher too, so there's that. And then, just family obligations. There's a lot of, particular hardships I'm not going to go into because that's a whole other conversation in my family over the last few years. And it's really easy to just get trapped in, the day-to-day. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. And where I found that it's important to me at least to block off some amount of time to go game with other people outside of the house is a form of me time. It's a form of self-care. It's me getting away from everything. And the only, not to sound selfish about it, but the only person I am now responsible for and having a good time and being okay is me. And so, yeah, and not to diss other people, but I more refer to my family. Like I don't feel a forced obligation to make everyone feel like they're having a good time or that they're taken care of and that I'm responsible for their behavior and who they are. And it's just, it basically just frees me up to relax and just be among friends and chill out and not have to worry about their development or my, relationship with them or anything like that. So I try to keep that time as sacred as I can so that I can go do that. Would I like to game more? Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad deal, but, those are the sacrifices you make to have a family.
Sure, yeah. So what do we do with our limited time, though? What happens, so Andy, let's say that your time, because I know this happens quite a bit, what happens when your time is taken from you, when you can't play? What happens if something comes up and then the game night that's usually your game night is no longer your game night? What do you do?
If it's, a temporary thing, like, it's just like, oh, this one Sunday we are going to the in-laws, okay, well, I'm going to be at the in-laws. Like that just isn't going to happen. Where I tend to have then do is that's where I've kind of developed a slight passion for either solo gaming. I'll bring a solo game with me and just get out of it for a while and just go be with me. Mm-hmm. It's not ideal. Like I would rather play across the board, but that kind of thinking lets me turn off my brain for a while, and it's a decent, alternative if it needs to be one. I've started playing online, but instead of platform like Yucata or Board Game Arena, and I've talked to you about it before, but playing online 18xx with some people I met at Gen Con, and Trent's been playing with us as well lately. To me, that fulfills more of the social side of it than like Yucata or Board Game Arena, because we do it through a Slack channel and we all kind of know each other in real life. So there's sort of like an obligation of, you know, I guess the way to say it's like a Board Game Arena, there are so many games that like started out fine with people making their moves, and then all of a sudden like 3 weeks would go by with one player never doing anything. And since there's instant communication through the Slack channel with me and the other people who live in Ohio, like we all talk, we hang out, you know, there's kind of a social contract there of like, you know, hey, we all have things come up and it's fine, but, you know, try to make your moves tomorrow so we can just keep the game moving. So it kind of eliminates some of that issue. And I'm finding that is really covering a lot of my super crunchy game desirability. Like, I feel like that's being met pretty well. So I find that on Sundays, like, I still tend to be pushy, because the one thing I hate is I don't have a whole lot of time on Sunday. So I don't want to sit around for a half an hour playing what should we play next game? So I still tend to go, hey, well, let's play this so that we can get playing something. And if I'm the one doing that, then odds are it's probably a game I want to play. But I don't feel that like burning need to say, oh God, we need to play 18 CLE because I haven't played an 18XX in forever. Like, that needs being kind of met. Mm-hmm. So I feel much more free at a game night now to play things. I mean, that being said, I'm still going to try to swing it towards the heavier end of stuff. If people are like, oh, well, you're playing all your 18XX games, let's play Codenames, I'll be like, what else is being played? You know, so I don't know. Some of the needs are being met online. Some of the needs are being met by doing this podcast. Some of the needs are being met through my interactions on Twitter with other board game people. And so I just found ways to take something that I desire to do and break it into more discrete moments where I'm not required to sit there for the entire length of time. So like with 18xx, we can take our moves asynchronously. Yeah, now the game takes a week to 2 weeks, but I don't have to block out an 8-hour time frame. And that can be really hard to do when you're a teacher and you have a wife and you have kids. Finding 8 solid hours all in one chunk is not always the easiest thing in the world to pull off. But, you know, I can jump on my computer, make a move here, make a move there. And I would kind of agree with Trent. Most online gaming, I've tried to do that in the past, has been not a terribly great experience because, yeah, the game either piddles off and just dies, or the social component of it seems to be an afterthought. Like the chat window is a tiny little thing off in the corner that you just kind of can easily ignore. Mm-hmm. Whereas doing these 18xx games online through a Slack channel, like I feel a little bit like I'm sitting across the board from somebody, just a little bit more than I would on Board Game Arena. And that kind of makes a difference. So I think I found other ways to incorporate my love of gaming and the hobby into my life. You know, whether that's healthy or not might be based on different opinions, but yeah, I guess.
Well, it's whether or not you feel like it works for you, Andy. That's the only opinion that matters.
Yeah, and I would say for the most part it does. I mean, it's realistically what I can get away with, you know, given my unique situation, and that's really where it is for everyone. I mean, you can have all the desire in the world to play long war games or 18xx games, but, you know, if you're the father of a 1-year-old, that's probably not a realistic, you know, expectation you have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I've got a little bit of a different issue, and that's just what I mentioned before is like how inconsistent my schedule can really be. I mean, I've tried to make it kind of regular, and there are definitely periods of time where I get into sort of a habit, like a schedule that I can maintain really well for a long period of time. And then I'll start something though, or we'll have something. Like my wife has several of those types of things as well. Like my wife is very involved. She has a lot of different things that she's the head play director, which they had a hugely successful play this last weekend, and it was awesome. So great job. My second time saying this, great job to the Boone High School Theater. Anyway, had a great time seeing that, but the stress that goes on to her then kind of channels through to me. And so it's just totally normal, when you've got a lot of events and stuff coming up. What ends up happening, and this is the unfortunate part, is what gets stressed is your game group, I think. Especially if you were a pretty pivotal, like, for example, if you've got a group of 3 guys, like, I don't know, Trent, how many people normally show up at your like Tuesday night games that you'd mentioned were kind of social, but like, if you only got like
3 to 5, usually 3 or 4. I'd say most of it's 3 or 4.
If it's 3, if it's 3 that could come, and then one of them, let's say that there's normally 4 people there, and then one of them just for 2 months now has a commitment where they can't come really at all, or maybe get away every now and then. Which for me, it's just like I only get away when it's raining, because that you can't play tennis in the rain because of wet fuzzy balls. Anyway, the thing is, like, now you have a game group that's 3 at most, and then if one of those guys has something come up that he can't make it, now there's only 2. And I feel like that's what's happened to me a lot is like a responsibility or a sort of a lifestyle change that happens to me frequently throughout the year will then unfortunately impact my gaming group. And I think the larger and the more resilient, the less that one individual impacts the group, it is, has less of that sort of an effect. But that's what makes me kind of sad is like, and I'm not saying that our game group is, like, here I mourn the loss of myself at our own game group, but I know that in the past we used to have a gaming group that would meet where it was generally 3 of us that would meet on Monday nights and play pretty heavy games. And that just kind of died because one of the 3 of us got very, very busy, knew he was going to be busy, couldn't do anything. And then one more of the 3 of us had occasional things come up. And it was just kind of like, it just kind of stopped being something that we penciled into our schedules because it wasn't anything we could get all of us together again for. So that to me, like, the unfortunate way that we form habits when we have commitments come up that last, several months or something, and the way that can impact maybe what used to be a pretty good thing you had going, is just something that I sort of, it's another thing. I'm not proposing a solution to it. I guess I'm just identifying that that's unfortunate, and that's where I feel like, for me, my lack of time impacts, the gaming hobby.
And I think it matters a lot to what kind of gaming you're talking about. Like, if you're into light to medium weight Euros, that can stand a lot of like new drop-ins. But, if we're talking like sitting across the table playing an 18xx, in the Ames group, there's really at this point like 3 solid people. And that's basically me, Trent, and Nate. And then we've got some people interested and some people that can do it now and again. And so that becomes very hard to like bring an 18xx game and just say, hey, if I got the right people, well, we'll play this tonight. I mean, if that's going to happen, that's usually the 3 people that play him the most scheduling it and then throwing it out there to whoever else wants to come. Mm-hmm. I think the least resilient to haphazardness like that is RPG groups. That's where I think RPG groups just fall apart because of that. Because if your character's not there and you're a critical part to the story, then you end up, the game suffers for the lack of you being there.
Campaign games too, as well. Like my Gloomhaven group. Like, I'm sorry guys, I'm totally the reason that we haven't played in forever, and I feel like I miss it a ton. I miss it so much, and and the Sunday night group the same way. I miss that a lot, though. I don't feel like I feel like people are still able to do whatever they do. If I have to miss it, like this last weekend, my parents were in town. Unfortunately, Sunday nights is never going to be a tennis thing for the most part, unless I'm out of town for something, which even that I can usually make it back in time. But yeah, the like you mentioned, I get the feeling, even though I've never been in an RPG group, I can only imagine that that's what it would be like.
Yeah, because otherwise, like it was some college theater group that did a video, and it still was like the most realistic portrayal of D&D I've ever seen on video. But there was the typical, like, the guy that just got a girlfriend.
Oh yeah,
and
this is like a show that was online, wasn't it? Like a
Right. Well, yeah, it'd be funny because it'd be like, hey, where's Rob? And like, oh, there's Rob's character. And he's just standing in the background in a pose, not doing anything. Until like he would show up for 5 minutes and be like, oh yeah, and then he'd start interacting, and then his phone would blink, and they'd be like, oh, back to NPC, and he'd run off to go be with his girlfriend, and and then they end up getting his character killed and have to explain it to him in real life. I'm like, yeah, that's where RPG groups suffer, is like, that's what's so hard, I think, about running a good RPG, is you basically have to have people that are super committed to being there every time for it to really go well.
And it takes resilience too, because sometimes, like, for example, there are things that are really outside of other players' controls. I mean, I guess it just depends on the person. Some people are flakier than others, but I don't get the feeling at all that, like, the individuals that I enjoy playing with are flaky necessarily. I get more just like, life gets in the way, especially if you've already got a lot of relationships and commitments. Like, I think the best time to be a gamer is when you are just like brand new to an area. When you've just moved into an area, it's so great to be a gamer, because that, you can kind of start a lot of your commitments and relationships based on your hobby, which is awesome. And I feel like, though, once, like, for example, this Sunday, I'm going to be busy for part of it. So the Gloomhaven group's not going to be able to meet, because I'm going to go, like, I'm going to an Eagle Scout Court of Honor, and I think it's an awesome thing that I got asked to be the master of ceremonies. But at the same time, like, man, did it have to be Sunday afternoon? You know what I mean? That sort of like feeling that's like,
Right. Well, and something important to keep in mind, because like with the difficulties I've had this year, like, I still see a counselor semi-regularly. And, one of the big things of advice she gives is that, and I don't know if this is an American thing or a human thing or whatever, but it's really easy to look at your time and look at gaming and think, oh yeah, that's just my hobby, it's not important. And it's easy to put that off to the side. But the thing that can happen is, like, especially for me, I'll notice if I keep putting that to the side, I become less of a desirable person to be around. Like, I become more cranky, more nasty, more upset, more stressed. Like, everyone needs that me time, that outlet. And if gaming is that for you, then you kind of owe it, as she said, not to yourself, but you almost owe it to everyone around you to take some of that time.
I agree.
Because
I also think
you're a better human being to everyone, not just yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that you owe it to those that are counting on you to be a gamer, to be transparent, to at least maintain some level of transparency about what's going on. And I mean, I know that probably what happens, though, in a lot of cases is just that people get busy, or they start forming habits that don't involve going to the game night. And it's just kind of unfortunate that, that with how much you depend on other people for a social hobby like gaming, it's what makes it so amazing when it works, and it also what makes it so painful when it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I
would agree.
Yeah, that's what happens when we feel all like our schedules are getting in the way of our gaming time. So, guys, let's go ahead and let's make this a little bit more exciting, and let's hype up some games. Okay, and Andy, you go ahead, sir. Tell us all about 18-something.
18 logging. Oh, no, wait. No, I guess I'm going to hype Lignum, in that this is a game that's already been out, but not really super accessible. I think you can still get it at Game Surplus, the old German, I think is German edition, something like that. I don't know. The thing I'm looking forward to, though, is that it should be coming out here pre-order wise. I would hope in the next few months from Capstone Games is doing one of their reprints of Lignum. And in reality, like other than Antiquity, this is probably, well, and Antiquity is more of a Civ game. So this is probably the only straight up Euro I'm really terribly excited about this year. Like getting my hands on. It's been harder to impress me on the Euro game side of things lately, and this is like the one that I'm really I can't wait to get my hands on. So it's, about logging, and I've heard it's like a super deep planning game. Like you really have to think ahead of what you're trying to do. So that sounds interesting. Just everything I've heard about it makes it sound like this is a Euro game that's worth my time to play, to try and get good at and play repeatedly. And Capstone Games is really good about taking games that needed a little bit more TLC and the component upgrade market and doing that with it. So I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on Lignum. And we are totally going to play the Monty Python Lumberjack song on repeat the entire time we play it.
I'm sure that you'll attract the right crowd for that, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the people that really like to think and repeatedly sing Monty Python songs.
Are you going to, though, put on women's clothing and hang around in bars?
Yeah, why not? I'm not really like an alpha male.
All right. I'll let that be. Yes. Apparently you're an alpha male if you don't put on women's clothing and hang around in bars. That would make, I suppose, myself an alpha male. And I'm going to guess you too, Trent. Unless, no, I guess I shouldn't be so presumptuous.
There are pictures of me in dresses.
They had to be some pretty tall dresses.
Well,
and
maybe,
let's just say, yeah. Well, and the thing is, with the logging theme, there will be many, many not podcast appropriate jokes being made during the gameplay. I'm just assuming.
Well, let's drop the logs, Andy.
Yeah.
Dropping logs.
Drop the logs.
Drop the logs. Okay. Well, that one's still appropriate, I think. Anyway, that's Lignum.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you guys about the Brass expansion or new edition. I don't remember exactly how they're going to be packaging it, but basically Brass recently came to Kickstarter, or it's coming to Kickstarter, I should say, but it recently had its the cover art from both the new edition, which is now called Brass Lancashire, and the new version will be called, the new map is going to be called Brass Birmingham. And those two maps are I shouldn't say maps, the two box arts just make me excited to see exactly what the board's going to look like. It looks incredible. It is, you got to check it out. It might be one of the best Euro game box covers of all time. It's got to be probably the best, potentially frowny Euro out there, because there's just so much more going on. Anyway, Brass Birmingham is specifically what I'm talking about, because Brass Lancashire is pretty much just cleaning up a few of the confusing rules and then redoing the artwork. Brass Birmingham is a whole new map in which you are going to have different goods, like sort of commodity goods, that you're going to be trading, much like you do with cotton. So you've now got multiple goods to manage, and you'll end up getting bonuses in these different goods, which will you get bonuses for doing actions first, to try to kind of jump and be the first person to do things, which I think is going to try to reward just maybe a little bit more the early bird gets the worm strategy, which a lot of times if you did your like your cotton mills first in Brass, if you did that before you really upgraded them much, it just was not worth enough points to matter, because they were gone after that first round and they just really weren't worth it. It was not worth an action and all the stuff you had to do and fund it. So anyway, the thing about Brass Birmingham, though, that excites me most is just that we've got this new added different commodities to be managing. Beer is supposed to be one of them. It's supposed to be kind of like one of the main ones that sort of glues together the new pieces that are added with Brass Birmingham. I'm really excited to see where exactly they take it, because I love Brass, and the fact that it's getting this type of love and attention. Roxley Games, which previously published one of one of my favorite all-time games, Steampunk Rally, which I did not anticipate I would be that big a fan of until I played it. Here, Brass Birmingham, just to me, the company shows that they have a respect for seasoned designs and taking them and making them awesome. And so I think they're going to give here Andy Clay a run for his money with what he's doing at Capstone Games. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I think we need to have multiple companies that are taking these games that really give you a deep slice of the pie here, and heavy games that have been around and they've had their they've shown their worth, and they're going to take that and they're going to build on it. They're going to give you more, not just reprint it with a new artwork. They're going to actually give you more. Love what I'm seeing so far from Brass Birmingham. The Kickstarter opens.
Yeah. I want one of the stretch goals to be all the components are made of brass.
Trent, any comments?
Not really.
All right, then you give me the details on an expansion to, oh man, you stole this one from me. I'm really excited to hear about this.
All right, Through the Ages. They released this is a great game by Vlaada Chvátil. I played the first edition literally almost to death. And it's a Civilization-based card game, and they released a new version of it about 2.5 years ago now. That was just basically a revision of the game. Think of it as version 2.0. The first edition of this game, the 1.0, never had an expansion, but 2.0 is getting one. And the way it's going to work is that in normal Ticket to Ride, you have leaders and wonders mixed throughout the game. The cards just pop up like other games. You draft them; they have profound effects on the game. Mm-hmm. So the way the expansion works is a whole new set of leaders and wonders, and depending on exactly how you play it, it's unclear as to all the mechanisms how this is going to work. But it's pretty clear that you remove all leaders and wonders from the game entirely, like as soon as you get the expansion, and you replace them with the generic cards that say leader and wonder on them that come up during the game. And when a leader or a wonder pops up, you take the respective leader or wonder card that's outside of the game and put it in this place. So that means that you can just very dynamically, you don't have to reshuffle or rebuild the game in any way. When you play a new game, you just choose the leaders and wonders you're going to use and set them off to the side and then just start. So you don't ever have to mix them back in, which I like. And they've started showing in screenshots and things like that some of the upcoming leaders and wonders, and they just seem like crazy. They do all kinds of strange things. Like, they utilize stuff that I feel like wasn't really utilized very well in the base game, that you never really had a reason to chase after them. And now you do. Like, I'm thinking of arenas. I saw there's a couple new leaders that really emphasize the use of arenas. And they never really emphasized much at all in the original base game. There wasn't a whole lot of incentive to use them because they weren't all that useful in the big scheme of things. But there's stuff coming that's going to make them useful. Mm-hmm. What I like is there's also, I've heard that they're going to come up with scenarios that are like certain mixes of wonders and leaders that kind of form a scenario for the game. Meaning that, like, they're meant to have a lot of internal synergy and do things that feel unique, or perhaps even tell like a historical story. And it's amazing how excited I can get about this game by a stack of like 50 new cards. But that's essentially what you're going to get. And that's really what I'm looking forward to. I feel like those 50 cards are really going to change this game. It's a game I already deeply love. So this is like one of those things that's just like an instant buy for me. The second I see it in front of me, it's going to be in my hands.
Absolutely agree there. It is truly something that I can't wait for. Just, not only am I excited with all the new content, but I'm excited that there's going to be now a reason beyond just, oh, hey, the new version came out. There's going to be a reason beyond that to continue getting this game played. So, it'll be a good sell to those people that always have to, that your game group, if your game group has that sort of cult of the new, I don't know, like disorder or whatever. I think this will help it stay relevant. So I'm excited for it too. All right.
Yep. And didn't we talk to Vlaada on this one? Because I remember him saying that they were going to implement it in the online version for playtesting before it was physically released.
Yeah, well, they were working on the app to get, and they were going to use the app then to play test it, is what I understood. So that must be something that they're they've kind of gotten to the place that they're
Yeah.
happy with it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. But yeah, the only comment I have is better than Nations.
It is way better than Nations. I wonder if you'll get a backlash from that in one of your 18xx games, Andy. Oh, I did.
That's right.
I totally
Definitely
just now
haven't
thought
told
of, during our topic, I wanted to mention that, like, getting, when you're really busy, like when you have like a 2-month commitment like I have with tennis where it's super busy, especially when it follows like an obsession that sort of kept me out of playing a lot of, I don't know, other games. Like my Game of Thrones game, like when you've got a living card game where you need to kind of keep tabs on the cards that are available and stuff, your barrier for entry continues to grow as they keep releasing new packs. And I'm trying to stay current. I've got them all, and I've been reading them, and I've been trying to do my study and stuff. But man, that's like, not only does your group miss you from being an opponent, but you start sucking because you haven't been doing your home. You haven't been keeping current. So I'm not presenting any solutions. I'm just outlining the struggle.
Is real.
It is real. And anyway, guys, it'll be a real struggle for us this week. I'm your host, Joe Sallin, and I'm joined tonight by
Andrew Dennison.
Trent Ham.
I hope you guys have a great week of gaming and catch us here next week on The Good, The Bored, and The Ugly. Or just have a great week because you can't always game, or at least I can't. Have a good week, guys. See you next time.
Stop. And
Stop it.
Wait.